They didn't just rewrite American history, they buried the truth beneath it. They didn't just remove the facts, they removed the bodies, they erased the names, and they told you a fairy tale. One where the heroes wore powdered wigs, waved flags, and stood for freedom. But in reality, behind the curtain of patriotic myths, behind every monument and textbook, is a crime so massive it built the very foundation of the United States. And no one ever told you. Until now, the truth is American history was engineered, carefully, strategically, deliberately, to hide one of the greatest crimes ever committed on this land. A crime not just of murder, not just of theft, but of erasure, erasing a people, erasing hundreds of nations, erasing centuries of culture, law resistance, and survival. And then they rewrote the past to make it look like it never happened. Before we dive in, like this video, subscribe, and buckle up. Because what you're about to learn is what they never wanted you to question. Let's start with the biggest myth in American classrooms, that the land was empty, wild, and waiting for settlers to civilize it. Wrong. By the time Europeans arrived, the continent was already home to over 500 sovereign indigenous nations. These weren't isolated tribes running through forests. These were civilizations, cities, economies, governments, diplomacy, agriculture, trade routes that spanned thousands of miles, and more importantly, to treaties. Said legally binding agreements signed with the U.S. government, promising peace, land, autonomy. But the moment those lands were found to have gold, oil, fertile soil, timber, or any profitable resource, the treaties were tossed aside like trash. What followed wasn't war. It wasn't an accident. It was policy. It was genocide written in ink. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Truss Indian Removal Act of Forest. They called it a necessary expansion. They called it manifest destiny. Let's call it what it was, as ethnic cleansing for entire nations. The Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole were violently removed from their lands in the southeastern U.S. Thousands died. Mothers with infants in their arms, elders unable to walk, children collapsed from disease and hunger. Forced to march over 1,000 miles in brutal conditions, they called it the Trail of Tears. Textbooks make it sound poetic, but it wasn't poetry. It was systematic death. And once the land was cleared, the settlers came, the cities were built, the crops planted. And then the history was rewritten. Suddenly, the land was pioneered. Suddenly, Native people were no longer nations. They were portrayed as primitive, violent, and doomed to vanish. And this is where the crime escalates. Because this wasn't just physical destruction, it was cultural annihilation. Throughout the late 1800s and 1900s, the U.S. government and religious organizations kidnapped thousands of Native children, forced them into boarding schools with one goal: kill the Indian, save the man. Their hair was cut, their languages beaten out of them, their names stripped away, their religions mocked and outlawed. They were punished for being themselves. Many never saw their families again. Many died, buried in unmarked graves behind schools that called themselves civilizers. And still you were never told, because they rewrote the crime. They made it about education. They told you it was assimilation. But ask yourself this: would you call it education if your child was ripped from your arms, forbidden from speaking, beaten for praying, and buried without your knowledge? This happened in his Americas, and still does. Even today, in the 21st century, pipelines are approved through sacred land. Water is poisoned on reservations. Native communities suffer the highest rates of poverty, suicide, missing women, and broken healthcare systems. The treaties are still broken. The land is still stolen. The history still silenced. But the most disturbing part, the American identity was built on that silence. From the start, the myth of America required erasing its original inhabitants. If indigenous nations were seen as human, legal, and sovereign, then nothing America did was legal. Not the land grabs, not the expansion, not the statehood, not the monuments. So they created a new story. They made George Washington a hero, never mentioning he ordered the total destruction of Iroquois villages. They honored Andrew Jackson on currency, never mentioning he defied the Supreme Court and forced thousands to die. They told you settlers were brave. They didn't tell you they came with fire, guns, disease, and legal fraud. And when Native people resisted, they called them rebellious. They called them terrorists. But who were the real terrorists? The ones defending their homes or the ones taking them? Let's go deeper. Did you know that in the 1970s, over 25% of Native women were sterilized without consent by government-funded programs? Did you know that children as young as 5 were used in chemical experiments in federal boarding schools? Did you know that more than 80% of Native sacred sites have been destroyed or seized? And did you know that all of this was scrubbed from the curriculum you were taught? They didn't just commit the crime. They designed the erasure. Hollywood helped. Painting natives as background characters, enemies, or relics, schools helped. Sanitizing the violence into westward expansion. And society helped by pretending these nations no longer exist. But they do. They are still here, still resisting, still reclaiming, still being ignored, still fighting for the recognition that was stolen from them. You want to talk about cancel culture? Centuries of genocide, land theft, and erasure. That's real cancel culture. So what now? Now you know. Now it's not just history, it's your responsibility. Because every American today is standing on stolen ground. Every highway, every school, every city is built on land taken through lies. And the least we can do, is tell the truth. The question is, will you? Will you pass this on? Will you question the curriculum, the monuments, the politicians who still use native land while ignoring native voices? Or will you stay silent because silence is what allowed this crime to hide for centuries? But now you see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like this video. Share it. Subscribe, because we are not just remembering history. We are correcting it, and the truth is long overdue. This is how they rewrote American history to cover up one massive crime. But that truth, it's rising again, and no lie can hold it back.